All right, Jason, a thought that was keeping me up at night is who is the most engaging sports team on social media? So naturally, I made the whole company stop everything they're doing and build a full 40-page report to answer that very question. So on today's show, we're going to really reveal who the number one team is across the NBA, NFL, NHL, and MLB. I've never seen a report like this where you look across the four major sports leagues and you're able to see exactly who is the most engaging across these social platforms. Now, one logistical item we'll mention is this is a report that is the last regular season completed. So as we record this, we are right in the dog days of summer and the MLB season. So we took last year's regular season into account. And we didn't include playoffs, which I think is a big outlier, where obviously if you're the Eagles or you're the Dodgers, you get a lot more at-bats for engagement. Mm-hmm. But this really puts everybody on an even playing field, which I like the way that we structured this thing.
And that's the thing you notice with so many reports out there. If you look, you can see that almost everybody's looking at the entire season plus playoffs. And then teams will say, well, yeah, we did great on social, but we didn't make that extra push into the playoffs, so we didn't get the same engagement as the Chiefs did. And so this report really puts it on an even playing field and is going to walk through audience, engagements per post, and then even look at some of the biggest movers in terms of engagements per post, which again is another metric that we don't see a lot of reports doing, and this will be really valuable.
We've been screaming for some time that followers are a vanity metric. We care about reach, we care about engagement, and we know that the discoverability of these social platforms, we're trying to get on that For You page. We don't really care if our followers see it or non-followers see it. We want more reach, engagement, and attention. So we want to really dive into that. We're going to also let you know that if you go to stndigital.com/sports report, you can download the full 40-page report. We're going to give you the highlights. We'll give you the most impactful things you can take away back to your respective brands. I mean, shoot, Jason, we've been talking to so many Fortune 500 brands that are doubling down on live sports and they want to get more involved with athletes. So regardless if you're a team, if you're a sponsor, if you're adjacent sports category, sports drink, sports brand, and this can really help anybody because it really talks about what is engaging sports fandom in general, which I think a lot of people can take away from.
If you are working in this space, if you work in social media, period, download this report, steal it, take all the insights, and give it to anyone on your team to help action upon, because there's so much opportunity in here. This took hours, hundreds of hours to create, and so leverage that for your brand.
Let's dive into it. So, Katie, we'll have you pull up the Big Four trends. These are the top content themes across the NBA, NFL, NHL, and MLB, which I love the way we did this because regardless of what league you're in, regardless of really what team or brand you're working through, this really tells you sports fandom in general is really resonating well with these key content buckets. So we'll start, you've seen this across SportsCenter, Bleacher Report, the House of Highlights of the world, but this idea of the highlight video with on-screen text, we've seen it so much where Instagram carousels are now somewhat overperforming just a naked Instagram reel, if you will. And we're seeing that the freeze frame of the moment with a clickbait, almost YouTube thumbnail type creative that makes you want to swipe to watch the dunk or swipe to see the scuffle that happened on the court. But you saw, Jason, here just an amazing engagement rate lift across the board across these four sports leagues.
Yes, and what we find on social is you're always trying to stop the scroll, of course, and naturally, historically, sports would just do that, right? You would see, hey, I'm a Pistons fan, and I now see, oh, here's a Pistons highlight I'm going to watch. That's not occurring as often anymore. People have much quicker attention spans in that way, where they're going to go through and they're going to give you 2 seconds if your content's not good.
I think they're less likely to invest in watching a 8-second lead up to see what Steph did. They want to see the screenshot of Steph like shooting a ball from half court. Now I got to invest in the 8-second lead up. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so having this text on screen instantly is hooking users to then say, I want to see the end. And so whether that's the carousel with the initial image that you swipe to, or it's a TikTok with the words on it, and it can be a 30-second long TikTok then, because then they know, I actually want to see that game-winning shot that's about to happen. I've been teased right at the top.
And I think there's a lot of stuff you can do with the sizzle can be more than the steak. We see a lot of these captions or these stickers on TikTok specifically, like, he did what? Yes. And it's like, well, now I got to see. And it may even be a little underwhelming, but that's how you kind of hook the viewer early on. And the big thing that everybody outside of these sports leagues the Bleachers, the House of Highlights, the NFL on Foxes. The Saquon Barkley hurdle moment just showed itself again and again and again throughout this report. But so many brands, so many platforms posted that moment, and so many of them that succeeded had the sticker or had the thumbnail, if you will.
Right. And you even mentioned there, right? I think historically on social, so many brands wouldn't want to give it away the end. And they would be saying, whoa, you have to stay to the end, or that's crazy. And that still works 100%. But certain people have lost their credibility with it because you see these payoffs be not a lot. And so now we're finding people being a little bit more specific to get to the end and, telling somebody that Darius Garland had a big game-winning shot from the logo doesn't make them say, oh, okay, I know what happened. I don't need to see it.
That's true.
Right? And I think that's what's really important here is people have found that it's a great way to hack that engagement and get someone to watch for the full 40.
The second bucket that we saw so much, especially this year, we've seen it for years now, but I think this year you and I saw this like 10x across all these different sports teams, was the player prompts, particularly the training camps, the practices. I think teams did such a great job of asking these casual questions that also engage the casual fan, which is so important. We talk about how you go viral is not, your diehards are going to love all your content, but how do you continue to increase your ecosystem? And this player personality content, when's the last time you talked or called your mom? Amazing. 344 times engagement rate lift that you and the team saw when you analyzed this data.
Right. And this content, when we show the example here from the Kansas City Chiefs, they've been doing this forever. And my mom loves the Kansas City Chiefs. And so she probably saw this content because it is something that's not incredibly football specific. Yeah. It's not X's and O's. It's just the players being human. And what's interesting here is when looking at these 5 top posts within the larger 30, they weren't all just this simple structure. You see a lot of this where people set up a little whiteboard and players walk by and they answer. We saw the Buffalo Bills doing really interesting things where they're handing player a drill and they're just seeing if they
I saw the Bills. I think it was last training camp where they said, hey, can I give you a haircut? And they turned on the buzzer and started going towards the players. And it was hilarious. And every player's like, yo, get the hell out. Don't you dare, right?
Right. And so those kinds of prompts, what we find is you can do it in a really easy way, right? Which this is low lift for the Chiefs. They set up a camera, they set up a whiteboard, whatever. But then there's these really interesting ways in which teams are starting to push into it. And what we find is that it actually surprises these players and makes them a little bit more human. Because all these big stars, they're media trained. When they're asked a simple question, they're going to give you this really simple media answer that is going to feel maybe a little bit fake.
A big trend we saw across, especially in the W, was handing players a photo of them like when they were 5 years old. And it's just such a surprise and delight. And the reaction you get out of it, like, where the hell did you find this, right? So such an amazing bucket that we recommend every brand that works in sports continue to hit this home. The third and final bucket, and these, so 15 of the top 30 posts were in one of these buckets, which is amazing to say. 5 of the top 30 in each of these buckets, which is kind of funny how it worked out equally there. Mic'd up content. I think we've all been obsessed, myself included, as sports fans, watching the Hard Knocks, watching the mic'd up in the interstitials of games. But I think social teams are now investing and working with the broadcaster. Like anytime there's a mic'd up moment, let's post it on social as well. And it's really, really overperforming.
One, it humanizes these athletes so much.
Especially in hockey. Yeah.
We see it on hockey. We see it on NFL. Both those leagues, obviously they have more opportunities to actually mic somebody up. But secondarily, it's these players don't feel human at times because they're so talented. But of course, they have so much gear on them. It's hard to even see their faces some ways. So this type of content is done so well. It humanizes players. And then really the big value it has is for sponsors. This is a great recurring series that you can throw a sponsor logo on, and it can feel very intuitive. There's different creative ways in which you can integrate sponsors into it. We've seen a lot of teams do, but I love this content because it performs so well. It's directly tied to the players, and it's very sponsorable.
So basically, if we ended the show right here, if you just won, if you're not doing these, start doing these, you'll see a major lift. If you are doing these, I would double down, triple down on these buckets because it's just juice this thing until the fandom says, it's kind of cliche, let's not do that anymore. But it's going to be a while before these are quote unquote cliche. I mean, these just work at the end of the day. We are going to walk you through the top 30 followers, top 30 most engaged, the biggest movers year over year. But one thing we wanted to show you is 3 of the most viral clips that happened across the 4 sports leagues again, going back to the regular season for all the completed regular season for all these sports leagues. And again, you can download this full report, scndigital.com/sports report, if you want to follow along at home. But walk me through these, Jason, and why they did so well and really the stats behind them.
So the first thing I'll say, the interesting part of this is they were also part of those top 30 posts we saw overall, but they were really unique in a lot of ways. They didn't fit into a typical content bucket that we're talking about as often. And so the first one here is from the Winnipeg Jets, and we'll click in and actually watch this video really quickly.
1,000x of their engagement average?
So yeah, this posted 1,000x better than their average engagement on the channel during regular season. And so this post here is really interesting. We'll click in really quick and watch the first 3 seconds.
Ever wondered what happens to all the hats that get thrown on the ice?
So as we're watching this on YouTube, if you're following along on audio, it's really an educational and informational piece that talks about what they do after a hat trick. When all the fans throw their hats on the ice, like what do they do with those hats? The players are like, I'm assuming that we donate them, but actually there's a very sophisticated process they go through that, again, taps into that casual fan. And for whatever reason, people found this very educational and very interesting, and it just went absolutely viral for the Jets.
And when you're trying to get that long watch time, you want to hook somebody in. This video is, probably about a minute long. It works so well because it hooks with a quick question and then brings in player personality and talent. But in the end, the majority of this video is actually done by a content creator for the Winnipeg Jets. And I think we're going to start seeing this trend now where you're finding this human representative for social.
We always talk about you're just peeling back the curtain of the team, even if it's not the athlete, and like this is what happens behind the scenes, and like you're so obsessed with the Winnipeg Jets, you just want to know like, oh, I never thought about that, but that is super interesting.
Right. We see the LA Clippers doing this ad nauseum with different talent within their team, whether it's players, obviously, but especially like broadcast individuals. They're posting these informative pieces of content, and they're really humanizing their brand and almost taking an influencer in-house.
The Intuit Dome has like every high school jersey in SoCal. Yeah, I've definitely seen that as well. Let's go over to the Cleveland Cavaliers. We won't play the music, which is a trending popular culture, a popular song, but very simple. People think our undefeated team is all about our city and fans, as this is a carousel, which are outperforming, but really it's all for him, a little pig,
I can't even fully explain what this means because I'm just too old. No, that's not it. But in the end,
814 times the engagement.
This is tying into Gen Z humor. It's really not being afraid to be silly on social. For so long, sports teams were really buttoned up, and they're like, we're the Cleveland Cavaliers. We would never want to be
and doesn't work on Facebook, doesn't work on YouTube Shorts, but works on a TikTok platform.
Does great on TikTok, exactly.
And then the last one, we've actually talked about this in our last NFL report. Last season, Eagles ran this one back, which is just a gorgeous bald eagle flying through the stadium, which you talked about this, like, even if you don't like football, you just want to see the majestic flight of a bald eagle. It's pretty cool. So what's really great about the Eagles, they knew that crushed for them. Mm-hmm. So they already made a spot in their content counter the next year to just run that puppy back.
Just keep doing it. And it works well for Eagles fans. It works well for NFL fans. It works well for fans of the actual animal, the eagle. I mean, this content continues to do well. And for a second, we're like, we shouldn't feature this. But they have this outlier of this tradition they've built up, this content that they've created. They shoot from different and multiple angles of this specific thing. Not every team can, send their mascot into the stadium. The Seattle Kraken would have a really hard time doing that. But the Eagles take advantage of something.
Thank God the Clippers retired Chuck the Condor. I hated that guy. All right, so we're going to dig in. We always talk about followers are a vanity metric, but we are going to show you the top 30 most followed teams in a chart like so here on YouTube. And, of course, you're following along if you've downloaded the report. So the first thing I'll say is the top 7 are all NBA teams, which I think speaks to how global the NBA game really is, especially, I'm going back all the way to the Dream Team. But another call out here, the top 11 didn't change. There's no year-over-year change on the top 11 followers as we see the Lakers, the Warriors, the Bulls, the Cavs, the Heat, the Rockets, the Celtics. And then we actually get into our first non-NBA team at number 8, the Dallas Cowboys, the Patriots at 9, and the New York Yankees round us up at 10.
And David mentions it here, but on that, if you're following along on YouTube, you'll see in the very far right column when you download the report, there's a rank change for all of these now, which is something that we're really excited about. And this is comparing year-over-year numbers numbers. And so rank change doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't gain more followers. They absolutely gained more followers. But where they stand within the 124 teams across these major four leagues, we've ranked all 124 of them and then have those rank change metrics to show where teams are gaining or losing.
And I think last season when we did the NBA specific report, we talked about this, and Sportico asked me this question on a recent podcast. But talk about the teams that have benefited from a LeBron James. The Cleveland Cavaliers, the Miami Heat, and the Lakers a little bit as well, obviously, in his recent stint. The Rockets benefited from the T-Mac, the Yao Ming in China, benefited from the James Harden and Chris Paul era. So you gain all these followers during whether it's a dynastic run, like the Lakers with Kobe and Shaq and all that, or you have a generational superstar that just gets so many more people, or you have a global star, Yao Ming, Shohei Ohtani, that builds so much followers. But then we always talk about now the only, negative to that is I followed you for LeBron James. I still follow the Cleveland Cavaliers, but can you find a way to hook me with the new storyline that is Donovan Mitchell, that is Darius Garland, et cetera?
Absolutely. And so when we're looking at the overall follower landscape, the first thing you'll see here, or the second thing you'll see, is that there's no NHL teams. This is really focused on NBA, then NFL, some MLB teams sprinkled in here as well. But it's very much so a legacy game. We're talking about teams that have had a lot of success for a very long time, and they're the ones that stay at the top.
A majority of the followers for the Bulls are Facebook, which is an older audience, but they leverage a lot of MJ, Scottie Pippen, and Dennis Rodman content, which taps into the 90s nostalgia, which people like me love, of course. But that's interesting, right? Like that's a global team that has so much fandom globally, but a lot of their content that hits on Facebook, their biggest platform, is the nostalgic of the 90s Bulls.
Right. And before we move to the next slide, you'll see the rank changes. There's not a ton of them here because followers is a number that's not going to change as regularly. Some teams, people come to us all the time and say, we want to grow followers by 2x. We want to jump the rankings by 30 spots. You don't do that overnight. That takes a very long time and a lot of factors that you really can't control, especially given social's current landscape.
And just so everybody knows, for logistical reasons, we included Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, X, and YouTube in these total follower numbers. And we did the same on the next slide, Katie. If you're getting value from this show, make sure to download the free full 40-page report, stndigital.com/sports report. Follow along at home and do an even deeper deep dive into all the analysis we had across the 4 sports leagues. Okay, followers are a vanity metric. Social has changed forever. It's all about discoverability. It's all about getting on the For You page. We don't care about followers. We care about total engagements. We care about engagements per post. This is my love language, is this slide right here. And this is the one that you should listen back to and send to your friends and send to your bosses, because this is really what matters. So let's dive in here, Jason, to the top engagements per post. Lakers, number 1, Dodgers 2, Eagles 3, Warriors 4, Chiefs 5. The Lions jumped 23 spots year over year to number 6 on this ranking. Obviously had an incredible regular season, had a run in the playoffs as well, but we only focus on regular season. The Steelers 7, Niners 8, Yankees 9, and Bills 10.
And this is where we start to see, if you're at home and you start flipping through this report, going back and forth between the two, we don't see massive correlations between having huge amounts of followers and having the most engagements per post. Sure, there's a little bit of a correlation that's going to help, but this is really going to be showing more short-term success. You're going to see teams that do really well on the field, but also there's some standouts in here that didn't perform well on the field, but still managed to tell really cool stories. The Bears are a great example here.
I want to point out the Dallas Mavericks at number 11. Of course, a lot of these engagements may have been Fire Nico negative engagements, but an engagement is an engagement with the Luka news. But they posted 7,000 times, which is drastically more than anybody on this list. The Lakers posted 4,000, Dodgers 3,600, the Eagles 3,400. So we're talking almost like 60%, almost a double from a posting standpoint. You could tell the Mavericks really leaned into, we want to get more at bats this season, and it paid off in a big way to make them top 11 in all of the 4 major sports leagues.
Right, and they're taking advantage of the success last year, and they're jumping 4 spots year over year. But then even partway through the season, they become a little bit irrelevant here with the trade and on court.
And one thing I said on that Sportico podcast too, where they had the exclusive to this report, so we just kind of dove into it, was I think oftentimes you say, yeah, but they're the Lakers, and yeah, but they got Luka. But what we notice about these top teams is, going back to the beginning of this show, they really leaned into the top 3 content buckets that works with sports fandom right now. Even a team like the Warriors, who you think could just roll out of bed and post Steph content, they posted almost 9,000 times, way more than anybody on the top 30. So with their internal team and with their ability to say, we're not going to rest on our laurels, we're not going to rest on Steph Curry is instant engagement, we're going to post mother effing 9,000 times in the regular season when the Lakers, Dodgers, and Eagles 4,000, 3,000, 3,000, more than double of anybody in the top 10.
Yeah, shout out to our friends over at the Warriors. But you see that those at-bats are so important. And the way social has been changing, right, is you need to create good quality content. You can't just post a bunch of slop all the time.
But you call it the lottery tickets to get you on that For You page, to get you that engagement.
That's your goal. You're, especially on a platform like TikTok, where you're testing content, and every platform is trying to have the same effect now. You're testing a lot of content, and sure, it might not be viral every time, but you can't expect everything to be viral. And getting the chance to get those at-bats is super important.
I want to shout out the Texas Rangers, who moved up 31 spots on this list from year over year. I'll point this out, and then Jason, you could talk about what you saw when you analyzed the Rangers in particular. But they only posted 2,600 times in the regular season, which was pretty much the least amount in the top 30 other than the Chicago Bears. So when you post, 4 times less than the Warriors, but you're still in the top 25, that shows me that quality over quantity, you're hitting these grand slams much more often. But with the Rangers, you saw something interesting, especially early on in the last regular season.
Yes, the Rangers, they were, again, for MLB, we're looking at last completed season, right? So we're obviously in the middle of the season right now, but last completed season, the year before that, they went and won the World Series. So the first piece of set of content, some of the best performing content on their feed was the new ring, the White House visits, etc. But then we also saw them do such a good job leveraging the celebrity talent that they had, and we noticed they are decreasing post volume by 22% year over year, but really honing in on those storylines that are about their historic success and finding the things that really do best.
And that reminds me of the Dodgers, because I think, again, I want to get away from this whole idea of but it's easy for them because, well, wait a second. Yes, the Dodgers have Ohtani, so you have a Japanese global audience. However, they do such a great job with their influencer campaigns, inviting people to games, collabs, tapping into other ecosystems that are in music and fashion, like outside of just baseball. And they should be rewarded for that. And they are. They're number 2 on this list. But I really want to push back against our industry. But they could just roll out of bed, post Ohtani home run, and they're going to be number 2 every year. No, they're actually really good. They have Ohtani, but they're doing best practices on social, and they're investing in more ecosystem to broaden their reach outside of just baseball fans.
And I think that's where a lot of leadership maybe in this space will typically say, right, okay, we have Shohei Ohtani. We actually don't need to invest in social anymore. All we do is just post these clips.
Yes.
But instead, we find that these teams are having way higher post volumes. They're actually investing way more in social because of the opportunity. And that's the biggest storyline here is when it comes to engagements per post, it's historic fandom, sure, that will help a little bit, but it's going to be about recent success and especially about who takes advantage of it.
One other thing I wanted to point out is the Bears obviously did not make the playoffs. They had the Caleb Williams bump. They moved up 27 spots. And even full disclosure, we've worked with the Bears a lot over the years. They brought us on for their London campaign. Mm-hmm. And we did a bunch of illustrations, animations, just like they invested. They didn't have to do that. They didn't have to invest in their London game specifically. I think it was week 6. But all that content we produced for them overperformed. That just adds to the engagement. So people are finding through holidays, through special games, just going above and beyond in these different tentpole moments during the season. It seems like a little flash in the pan at first, but once you look at the full regular season, like, oh, wow, that actually allowed us to move 27 spots up that list.
Especially when it comes to the international audience, those kind of moments, huge opportunities.
Okay, there's so much value because we also ranked, right, every league in particular.
Yes.
Okay. So when you download the report, you'll see, you can go, if you work in the NBA and you want to see exactly where you landed, if you weren't in the top 30, you can dig into each league as well.
Yeah, that's what's really important here is everything we've talked about so far, we actually do these for each leagues individually. So please go in, download this report, and you can do this. The same analysis we're giving us right now, we have for each league individually.
I think I may have misspoke. I think the next slide is my love language that I'm really excited about. And this is the top 30 team biggest movers. So this is definitely power ranking style. And I love this slide, Jason, because it really tips the hat to the people that made the biggest year-over-year change in terms of their engagements and their engagements per post. Give it up to the Commanders, who are number one on this list. They moved 45 spots on this. Now, again, pushing back. Yeah, but they got Jaden Daniels. But you're like, no, that's not the full story.
Right. No, not at all. And with the Commanders, of course, on-field success is going to help here. But we noticed that they increased post volume by 80%.
That's a big deal.
That's increasing their total engagements, of course. But we're looking at engagements per post with this.
More at
and
bats,
so
yep.
they're getting more chances to create really high-performing content, and their content on average is doing better. So it's not as if them just doing well on the field turned into really strong content. And I think that's important to call out here, David, is we did an analysis even deeper on this, because I think that's a lot of people's assumption. Immediately says, we've been in the room, we've talked to plenty of people that when they are ranking all the teams in their league and looking at social performance, they're always going to say, well, yeah, but this team did this and we can't control it.
Well, this report gets rid of that whole notion of the but, because so first of all, let me just, for audio, Commanders were the biggest movers. Then the Buccaneers, Charlotte Hornets, Carolina Panthers, Texas Rangers, Houston Texans, Cleveland Guardians, Minnesota Vikings, and Chicago Bears. They all jumped at least 20 spots up this ranking. And, okay, let's talk about that, Jason. So, but Jaden Daniels, and they had a great run into the playoffs. Charlotte Hornets. We have LaMelo Ball. We are not a good team on the court. We are quite awful when it comes to our record. No disrespect to the great people at the Charlotte Hornets. Mm-hmm. But one of their most viral pieces was a Halloween scare prank where LaMelo Ball had one of the most amazing reactions, where he literally punched the mascot or punched, the scare tactic there. And it was like literally one of their number one pieces of viral content. The Hornets were like, listen, we're not good on the court, but we're going to take other swings in different areas, like a holiday, like Halloween. They're whiteboarding out ideas. How about this? Let's scare players as they walk in to the facility, and then you just get a once-in-a-lifetime reaction from LaMelo Ball, and then that becomes your highest piece of engagement of all time.
And we've talked about these in our podcast, too, and you can triple down on a piece of content
3.8 million engagements on that scare prank.
You better bet they're going to post that on Halloween again, and if they don't, they're missing out on another 3.8 million
Wait, I just thought about this. They got 19.3 million total engagements. 3.8 million came from one single video of a scare prank that had nothing to do with on-court success. This is not a LaMelo Ball pass, dunk, deep three. This is literally an idea like, what if we scared our players coming to the facility and it gets 10% of your total engagement for the entire 82-game regular season?
Right.
That's insane.
Absolutely. And the Hornets, like we talk about, they may not be doing well on the court right now, but their social team was very conscious in decision-making. They went out and they actually decreased post volume by about 26%. They leaned into what they saw good engagement on, which would have been LaMelo Ball, who is not featured in 10 of the top 10 posts, and 9 of the top 10 are on TikTok.
Play the hits.
Younger audience, and so it's a mix of highlights. It's obviously the Halloween scare we're talking about, but really play the hits and lean into the right thing.
I think teams and brands, like we always use the analogy of the terrestrial radio. They play the same 7 hits, Taylor Swift, Drake, whatever, Morgan Wallen, but I think teams are like, but we don't want to over highlight. I mean, even like, I think a publisher like a Bleacher, like we post too much like Steph and LeBron content, but like this is the stuff that the fans want to see and they can't get enough of. So the Hornets are like, you want more LaMelo Ball? We got you.
And, another good example of this is the Panthers when it comes to star power.
Shout out to them.
And we'll dive even deeper into them for a second. But Xavier Leggett was featured in 2 of their top 4 posts, but they used him a ton because he's hilarious, right? And so leaning into those types of athletes, whether it's their on-field performance or off, they obviously use a lot of Bryce Young.
This may be a silly analogy, but look at Jersey Shore, for example. MTV puts these crazy people together in a house. But Pauly D in the situation were just bigger drivers than maybe JWoww and Sammy, right? So I use that example because once you have certain people like Leggett on your team that people are falling in love with that can't get enough of, then you're driving more content opportunities with those. I mean, you can call them creators almost. You can call them Jennifer Aniston popped on Friends much more than the other castmates, so they rode that for a lot of their ratings.
Right, exactly. And so the Panthers did a great job with that. Bryce Young, Adam Thielen for on-field success, Xavier Leggett for this kind of humorous, angle to content. And the Panthers are a really interesting one, David, because you actually spoke to a member of their team as well, right?
Yeah, so they really doubled down, and I think you have the stats on this, but again, they went in strategically and said, we have to post more. We have to post much more than we did last season. That was a strategic decision they made on game one, and it paid off in a big, big way.
It did, and I dove deeper into this.
Okay.
And so when I first looked at it, they increased post volume across all these platforms year over year by 16%. And I thought, okay, that's not a massive increase. But what we saw is they drastically changed their post allocation. And so now they went up on TikTok by 67%, which made up 11 of their top 15 posts. Instagram went up 96%, nearly doubling their post volume of in-feed.
Well, and we talk about this ad nauseum, like depth versus width. And I think we saw the Brooklyn Nets a couple of years ago that they were awful on the court, but they were randomly number one on TikTok.
Yeah.
And we were like, how are they doing this? And we realized they pulled back resources on Twitter and post volume on Twitter, and they just freaking quadrupled down on TikTok, and it paid off. And this paid off for the Panthers as well.
It did. It performed really well, and you see why they jumped so high here. And again, I think this ranking here is something that a lot of leagues need to start looking at, teams within leagues, to better understand how they're performing in comparison. You can't always just look at that total number. But another team we want to look at here, because we're talking about maybe not having as much on-field success. We mentioned the Panthers, the Hornets. Earlier mentioned the Texans, which, going from
Texas Rangers.
Texas Rangers, thank you so much. Going from a World Series win all the way to missing the playoffs, but still having good performance on social. Another one here is the Florida Panthers, back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, and really had a large increase in engagement per post by about 40% year over year. And that was a really interesting finding because they're doubling down on their performance. They really leaned into the heartfelt and humorous content. They brought into their social media content buckets and didn't solely just focus on what was happening on the rink. Instead, found a lot of different unique ways to engage,
storytelling,
which launched them up the rankings.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a full 40-page report. I want you to also give us your overall takeaway as like a final pin in the pad, if you will, here for the top 30 biggest movers.
Yes, and when we looked at this, because we went even deeper, right? There's so many notions that teams and people that work within teams have around
success on field or court,
on social, and how on court, on field, on rink affects that on diamond. But what we find is there's only a mild positive correlation between team performance and social engagement. And the teams that do really well are the ones that are able to take advantage of it. They're able to double down. They're able to increase their resources, increase their post volume when it happens. And you never know when it's going to happen. Look at the Washington Commanders.
Look at LaMelo Ball, 10% of their total engagements is the Halloween scare prank. So I love that. And I think, again, there's so much more detail. Please go to stndigital.com/sports report. Download this full thing, slap your logo on it, get the promotion. We already did all the homework for you, so you don't have to. But hopefully the biggest takeaway and what I take away from this, Jason, is if you can have a strategy going into your season, if you could focus on content buckets you already know work across the four, like literally if I'm, let's think about this for a second. If I'm an NFL team and you and I are planning to go into August and start our NFL season, I'm focusing on player prompts, mic'd up. I'm focusing on highlight carousels and really focusing on the thumbnail, if you will, of social media to swipe to see or to have the sticker so that the social consumer will invest in your content. But then I'm also looking at the biggest movers on this list, seeing what they did. They maybe doubled their post volume. They maybe didn't. They only 19% increased it, but they went all in on TikTok, or 98% more on Instagram. So depth versus width. Follow the top buckets that are working across sports fandom in general, and just those two things alone can see you rise up the rankings 25, 35 spots.
And that's the goal in the end.
That's the goal. All right, so we hope you guys download the full report. Hope you found value in this quick 10,000-foot overview. We had a lot of fun really ranking all these teams. Again, not our rankings. This is based on data, and analyzing how they did it. So this is factual. This is not any type of Jason and David. I know the Lakers were up there, but I promise had nothing to do with that. So hope you guys enjoyed. This has been yet another edition of the Business Social Podcast. Thanks to Jason. Thanks to producer Katie. This has been all powered by STN Digital. I'm David Brickley.